All right, guys. Our next guest needs very little introduction. You know him from his excellent interviews, articles, and even on the UFC broadcasts themselves. If Magic Mike worked at ESPN, he would be this man. Brett, the Threat Okamoto. Welcome back to the show. They say dreams don't come true, and yet here you are. How are you, man?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for the kind intro as always.
Dude, I mean, I don't know. It's this interesting week in MMA, and thank you so much for joining us to sort of talk about it. But we're still in this UFC 279 aftermath, and I know you spoke to Khamzat's coach, Andreas Michael, and arguably the main topic was obviously Khamzat's weight and future. What was your sort of biggest takeaway as far as what the problem is for Khamzat, and how do you fix it if he is to fight at 170 again?
Man, I don't know. I think his future at 170 is like you can't feel good either way about it. You know, if you're like, oh, just move him up, never let him fight at welterweight again. There's part of you that's like, but he's made the weight and he looks so good at welterweight, and you know that probably his future is at a higher weight. So if he's ever going to win a title at 170, let him do it now because it's going to be harder to come back when he's older. So just do that. You know, he's got all the potential in the world, obviously. So if he can win that belt, you know, then he goes to 185, potentially, you know, we're talking about grand things that has, you know, there's a lot of ways to go here. But from everything we've seen this guy, he looks like a champion, right? So so part of you wants to let him stay at 170 and chase that that goal, you know, win a title 170, potentially win a title 185, and then who knows what could come after that. But then the other part of you is just like, why? Like, why keep having him at 170? You know, it's clearly just so difficult. He's one of those guys where he's one of those kind of complicated guys where his discipline in the gym is like basically matched by no one. But in order to do that, and that's what, you know, the point that Andreas Michael was making to me is that in order to do that, like you can't be starving yourself and do that. You can't be starving yourself and have that type of work ethic in the gym. So if you want Khamzat to be Khamzat, he's got to eat. Well, then he's going to be really hard for him to make 170, you know, and then it obviously the UFC that comes into play of do they trust him? Can they put him in main event? So I guess my takeaway was I really don't know what's going to happen with Khamzat as far as his career at 170. I do think his next fight will be at 185, and it would not surprise me, guys, if he wins that fight, he looks good in it, that they just decide never to go back to 170. But, you know, time will tell. I would say it's very 50-50 as to whether or not he'll fight at that weight again.
So people get into the UFC sort of and their trust for Khamzat. I just want to know, like, how much do you think him not making this weight, not fighting Nate Diaz, not having that moment last weekend where he could have potentially sort of put him away, and then coming out to all those boos, and you know you could kind of feel the fans kind of turned on him after all of that happened. How much do you think that sort of, I don't want to say set him back, but how much do you think he left on the table by it not coming together for him?
Not much, honestly, because I think that the villain turn, you know, like I interviewed Darren Till too, and Darren was just talking to him like, look, like, see all this hate, like let's just use it, you know, like just be the bad guy, be a villain, be evil. I think Darren even used the word evil with me, and then Khamzat did it, and that can be a very, very powerful marketing tool, man. So I think that Khamzat's stock, just in terms of, forget for a minute if people like him or don't like him, but just his stock of people's interest in him still went up dramatically. You know, I don't think that him kind of dragging around Nate Diaz and submitting him in like 2 minutes, like he did to Kevin Holland, I don't think that there's a huge difference, man. Honestly, I think that there's probably a little bit of a difference, but I also think that just generally interest in this card went up after Khamzat was getting into it with Holland at the press conference, so much so that they had to cancel the press conference, and then he missed his weight. Like it's that old saying that no press is bad press. So I don't think that I think that he didn't really miss that big of an opportunity in terms of actually getting to fight Nate. As far as what the UFC feels about him, I just think that in the moment they were very, very angry with him. Like this card was set up for him, and then it's like he kind of spit in their faces by missing weight. But I think as they dug into it and then they cooled down, they were like, hey, you know, this guy, it's not like he wasn't in shape. You know, he came in. I've been told by multiple people he came into this week at the same weight that he has previously when he has made weight.
Yeah.
And then it's just maybe his body composition. And you guys know how these drastic weight cuts are. Sometimes the body just refuses. It's just stubborn and won't do it. So I think that the UFC has kind of, in a sense, forgiven Khamzat for missing that opportunity. But I still, again, like I said, I still don't know what they're going to do about 170, because there's one thing to like not be mad at the guy anymore and be like, hey, you tried your best to make the weight. And there's another thing to be like, okay, we're going to sign up for this again, you know?
Yeah, of course, because obviously, like, you picture a scenario where he's theoretically ready to fight for a title. If people slotted him in there against the winner of Usman and Leon, no one would bat an eyelid. But how do you build another event around him, knowing that, well, he may come in, he may not come in, we may not have a title fight? I'm in a similar position to you where I can't find a way where you would have that testing ground to really gain back the UFC's trust. You know what I mean?
Well, if the UFC decides to do it, you can bet that they're going to have a backup plan and that they're going to be monitoring his weight. You know, I guarantee it. They're going to be asking for basically daily updates, I would guess. They're going to want to know what he's eating. They're going to, at least this is I haven't been told this, but I'm pretty certain that this is what would happen, is that they're going to want to know like what his diet looks like, what his weight is. And if like all of a sudden his weight jumps up a little bit, they're going to be like, Khamzat, scientifically, we know that you went and ate chocolate last night. You know, it's going to be one of those things where they can hold him accountable and just let him know that like, hey, if you're not under this weight, you know, and we don't like what we're seeing from your preparation standpoint in terms of, you know, you getting across the finish line and seeing it through to a title fight, then we're just going to take you out 2 weeks before and replace you with somebody else. I mean, that's not the way they want to run their business for sure. But you almost have to approach it that way, I think, if you try to do it again.
I know that Andreas also told you that, he's guessing Khamzat's next fight will be at middleweight at the end of the year. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because Israel's obviously fighting Alex Pereira in November. So a Khamzat fight, in December, end of the year, doesn't really line up timeline-wise. But if he fights at middleweight, do you think an immediate title shot makes sense? I know at the start you mentioned if he looks good in his first fight, he might just go fight for the title. But here's the thing, right? Rob, Jared, Marvin, Paulo, Derek, they've all lost to Israel. Sean Strickland is at number 7, right? And he needs a win. He needs to fight first. And Israel wanted Sean because he sees him as a money fight. Khamzat is a way bigger name than Sean. He's undefeated. Better money fight. The trash talk and build up would be insane. I think Israel would love it and thrive off it. Israel is lacking in fresh contenders, and he always chooses the hardest fight in terms of like a Romero or a Paulo Costa. He doesn't handpick fights in terms of being easy. He handpicks the hardest guys. Is it just me, or is this like the perfect gift for Israel? And does it make sense? Or you give him someone else and potentially the whole thing gets derailed. I feel like the UFC is like, hey, man, we missed out on some money. We'd like the money now. Let's do this.
No, I mean, you laid it out perfectly. Israel's running out of guys to fight. I mean, you're giving him a guy who obviously is very, very decorated in kickboxing, but has 7 MMA fights. I mean, I think that they're in love with the storyline, and it's a great storyline. And Alex Pereira is super dangerous, and I'm looking forward to that fight. But I think part of the reason why Alex was fast-tracked as much as he has been is because of what you're saying. Israel's running out of guys, and he already tried to go up to 205. That didn't work. So, yeah, contenders are a good thing. Is it the best thing that could happen for him? I mean, that depends on what you think of his takedown defense and if he can beat Khamzat Chimaev. But yeah, I do. Like I said, I think that if Khamzat takes a fight at 185 and he looks good, I think that for all the reasons you said, the UFC is just going to be like, why would we go back to 170? Why? I mean, we have Colby there. Now we have this big trilogy with Leon and Usman. Like, we have some things going on there, and we don't kind of trust his ability to make it consistently and make it safely without any drama. Like, it's headaches, it's risk. So if he looks great and he goes out there and beats a top guy at 185 and Israel beats Pereira and that's a big fight. That's a huge fight. So of course, not only would you think Izzy would be interested in it from a sense of new blood and just money, but the UFC is going to want it. The UFC is going to be super interested in it. And the fact is like, I've really come to believe Khamzat when he says he does not care. Like, he just doesn't care. He just give him a fight, and so he's going to want that fight. He's already been calling for that fight. So I think that that's pretty likely, guys. If those two win fights by the end of the year, I mean, we could be talking about this fight at the beginning of next year. I think that that's highly possible.
So his road to the title, I got to ask, Paulo Costa, where do you sit on that fight? The feud is kind of there. Is it too risky to put him up against someone like Paulo Costa because things might get derailed? Or is this like a big money fight and a good opportunity for Khamzat to really make a stamp on the middleweight division before this title fight?
I think it's perfect, honestly. It's the only reason it wouldn't be perfect is if you're the UFC is that, Khamzat just proved to be unreliable in the main event, and Paulo Costa has proven to be unreliable.
Yeah.
They can both fight at heavyweight, Brett. Yeah. No one would mind.
You're putting two kind of wacky guys who can do wacky things during fight week together. But you got the feud, you got the look of it. I mean, the banter between these two would be hilarious. Paulo Costa is genuinely hilarious, guys. I think he's probably the funniest guy in the UFC at this particular moment. And I think he's gonna mess with Khamzat, and that just the way Khamzat's, straightforward, kind of smash character. I think that the buildup would be terrific. They got the footage of, these two yelling at the PI. And to your point about like stylistically, I mean, I think that you're beyond that with Khamzat. You don't care. Like you've built up the hype. So now it's just you treat him like a contender. You treat him like a title contender. So if he wants to fight Israel Adesanya, then yeah, he needs to face a top 2, top 3, top 4 guy, and you could give him Robert Whittaker and that fight would be great. But I think that because Paulo, there's heat there, that fight would sell a lot. It would build him even further. And then if he wins, you've got a huge title fight between him and Izzy.
I would very much look forward to all of Paulo Costa's memes, the memes, leading up to the fight, during the fight, after the fight. Speaking of memes, though, don't let your downstairs section look like a meme. Get smooth like eggshells for your junk with Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. Don't be like a Khamzat and have 7.5 pounds of unnecessary things weighing you down there. Shave it all off with Lawnmower 4.0. The Performance Package 4.0 makes the perfect gift where you also get the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer. You get the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver ball toners, so you're smelling minty fresh at all times. Free bag, free gift. Can't really beat it, isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man. Jump on Manscaped today. Get 20% off and free shipping now with that code word submission, and make weight next time you're in the bedroom. And Cass, I mean, when it comes to making weight, it's also about that cheddar, because a bit of cheddar makes it better. And at my bookie, you guys can make that money by using the code word submission. You guys can get 100% match bonus. And there is just so much to make when it comes to the fights that are coming up. You can claim your deposit bonus dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. How about this? You got Paul Gallen fighting 2 people tonight over here in Australia. The odds are just ridiculous. Paul Gallen is at minus 833, while Justin Hodges is a plus 411. And then in the other fight, Paul Gallen is minus 3,033 at the time of recording, with Ben at plus 769. He's fighting 2 people in one night. It's just, I don't know what's happening here in boxing in Australia. Brett, you might have to come down here and sort things out. And of course, you got the normal fights as well. Anderson Silva minus 129 versus Jake Paul. You got minus 111. So there's a lot of great odds here. Of course, all your UFC 280 odds as well. Sean O'Malley, for example, plus 299, and Peter Yan minus 416 at time of recording. Jump on MyBookie today, claim that deposit now, Cass, and make some serious cash.
There you go. And if you're like Dennis, who just got back from New Zealand, maybe you're traveling, maybe you're in all sorts of airports using their dodgy Wi-Fi, don't get all your credit card details and everything stolen from you. Use NordVPN to protect yourself, protect all your data so it doesn't leave your computer and gets given away to, say, your internet service providers or anybody else trying to access your details. Also, when it comes to streaming platforms or even plane tickets, you can get them cheaper just by pretending and making your computer believe that you are in a different geolocation. I'm in Australia, but I watch American Netflix all the time, or UK Netflix, and I get my Netflix cheaper because when I buy Netflix and I pay for it, my computer thinks I'm in Mexico. Dennis, you did the same thing with the NBA pass, I believe. Thought you were in Indonesia or Philippines where the price is cheaper, and it applies to a lot of other things. Best thing of all, no speed throttling or buffering when you have your VPN on. It is buttery smooth, so you can have it on at all times and feel protected. And it's like the price of a cup of coffee every month, so you're actually saving money by using it to purchase your online stuff. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. Protect your neck. Submission Radio Clan coming at you. And right now, NordVPN has a deal that you can't pass up. Go to nordvpn.com/submission or click the link in the description below. Get a huge discount off your plan, plus free threat protection, plus 30-day money-back guarantee so you can try it, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free. Try it today. One of the best apps in the business, NordVPN. Keeping the porn smooth. Let's all be honest, boys. Keeping the porn smooth when it comes to relaxing on a Saturday night. And thanks to Submission Radio, you can thank us as well. Okay, Brett, let's just quickly get back to what we witnessed at UFC 279, because I just want to get your take on what was really kind of like a swan song for Nate Diaz. Everything kind of went perfectly. Like, I know the UFC kind of set him up with a brutal opponent in the hopes that potentially they can devalue him on the way out of the company. But not only did the things work out where, you know, fans were cheering him, Khamzat didn't make weight, but then he goes on to submit Tony Ferguson, getting a more favorable fight. And it was sort of like the big sort of talk of the town throughout the whole week. It really felt like you could feel that star power coming through the screen. Of course, you had that really fantastic interview with him going into the fight as well. How do you look back on UFC 279 and almost like the Nate Diaz showcase and tribute that went through that week in people's minds, kind of promoting his next venture in a lot of ways?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the feeling I get is just being happy for Nate, man. He deserves it. You know, he's a guy who's done things his own way throughout the entire time. He's been true to himself, and that's why people love him. I said on the broadcast, on the post show the other night, that he did the impossible. He turned his career into something that had nothing to do with UFC titles. I mean, when you think about all of the stars in the UFC, how many of them were even able to do that? Like we didn't even think about a title. Like, we talked about Nate Diaz all the time, and a title wasn't even in the conversation because it didn't matter. Like, we didn't care, you know. Like the only other people I can think of that would fit that mold would be maybe Jorge Masvidal, and then even like somebody like Chael Sonnen, who was never champion, but even he like rose so much because the title was part of that storyline, as part of the narrative that he was going after Anderson Silva. You know, with Nate, we didn't even talk about him going after the lightweight champion because it didn't, like, you didn't care. Like, the title was meaningless when it came to Nate Diaz, and that's like impossible to do. So with the way everything changed, and like I felt like the stress and almost the emotion on him when I talked to him during that interview, you know, when I sat one-on-one with him in the hotel room, and he wasn't happy, man. Like, he understood that it was business, and then he understood the UFC was trying to build this guy off of him. And like, he got it, but then like when it's happening to you, you know, you're just like, this is messed up, you know. And you could sense that in him. He wasn't happy, and he didn't like being used in that way. So I think when it changed to Tony Ferguson, of course, he was just like, it's like a weight was lifted off his shoulders, and then he was so happy after the fight, you know, like just talking to everybody, joking around with everybody, you know, pointing out Mark Raimondi and claiming that Mark was at the trap house smoking weed, you know, 48 hours. He was over there working he was just in a great mood, man. He was playful. He was like, it's like he was like acting like he was like a buddy of yours rather than like a superstar that you were there to cover. And so the press conference was super cool afterwards, and he was just in a great mood, and you were happy for him, man, because it's Nate Diaz and he deserved that.
It was incredible, man. And just, yeah, the fact that it turned into a Nate Diaz tribute pay-per-view on his way out was incredible. What did you take?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. What did you take it to mean when he said that he wants to take over another sport and show these guys how to do it? Like, saying how McGregor couldn't do it right. What do you think his actual plans are? And what do you think Nate Diaz's definition of taking over is?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him to the Nate is thinking that he looks at the best of the best in boxing and says, I can beat them, you know, because that's just how he is, you know. So it wouldn't surprise me if he thinks that he could go into boxing. You know, I think the Jake Paul thing is very realistic. You have to see what happens between Jake Paul and Anderson Silva on October 29th. And it would not surprise me if Nate was there. It would not surprise me if he fought one of those guys next. And then based on what happens, you know, and how he's feeling in the gym, that if he wants to basically kind of start a half boxing career, you know, and fight some of the guys that interest him. I mean, when he's going to be in conversations that most people shouldn't be in, because he's Nate and because he's a name. And so he's going to get opportunities that that wouldn't go to anybody else, and that he's going to have an opportunity to fight some guys who have a legitimate record. I don't know if that's the best thing for him. I mean, because let's just be honest here. Like, they're two different sports. And if he fights a guy who's really, really good in boxing, I don't think it's going to go well for him, but he's earned the right to go out and try that. And if he believes that he can compete with those guys, then, you know, those opportunities might come up. I just think more than anything, he wants to sit back and see what's there. Like, he didn't like it. And you can totally understand this. that his UFC career, it almost felt like he was either sitting or he was fighting the guy that they had plans for, that's how it, like, that he was being used as a catalyst for someone else's career, like, just sit and wait, Nate, until we got a good situation for you. And usually that situation was, fight a guy that we want to build, fight Jorge Masvidal, he gets a title fight. Yeah. Fight Leon Edwards, he gets a title fight. Like, so I think he wants to be the star. He wants to be the A side because that's how he views himself. And so that's what he's going to go out and look for.
Yeah. And also you'd think a whole lot of money, right? Like actually being able to get a good percentage of the buys or whatever happens. We saw Tyron Woodley was able to clean up in his run. So it's good to see that. I know you mentioned this Jake Paul and Anderson Silva fight, man. I just got to quickly get your take on it. It was really interesting to see the face-off between the two. It was kind of like we go from this Nate Diaz tribute pay-per-view, then we go over to this stare down between Jake Paul and Anderson Silva with Chael Sonnen in there. And all of a sudden it's like we're back. We've just gone in the time machine, going back in time and see these guys like Oscar Willis did a really excellent interview with both guys where they sort of spoke about the rivalry and they sort of shook hands. And it was just really nice to see. What did you make of the sort of friendly face-off that Anderson Silva had with Jake and that whole sort of press conference that turned out to be like really endearing in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's what I mean. I'm just from the standpoint of whatever I'm seeing, I can get interested in it if it's authentic. Like that's why I know a lot of people who follow this sport. I've also loved pro wrestling. I am Mr. like anti-wrestling, and it's not. I don't have anything against it. I don't have anything against anybody who likes it, but it just bores me to death. I want to see real stuff, And so if that's the fact that Jake Paul took a photo with Anderson Silva and he was somewhat of a hero to him when he was a kid, and now like, what are they? They're going to start talking trash. Of course they're not, So it is endearing and it is fun to watch. I got to be honest. I'm not paying a whole lot of close attention to it. I'm interested in that fight just from the sense of, it seems like a tougher fight for Jake. And just from a business standpoint, like how long is this Jake thing going to go? What other names is he going to attract in the MMA world? Is it Anderson? I mean, could this guy, by the time it's all said and done, end up boxing Anderson Silva, Nate Diaz, and Conor McGregor? Like, it's just mind blowing. It's completely mind blowing that is actually something that could happen. So I'm curious from that standpoint of seeing how he looks against Anderson and like what it could lead to. As far as like the buildup, yeah, I mean it's genuine. So I tend to like genuine.
I'm curious, what do you think? We'll let you go in a second, Brett. What do you think the buy rate would be for this one? Because obviously Anderson is a draw. Jake Paul is a draw in his own right. But obviously with the Tommy Fury fight and then Hasim, like the interest just didn't really seem to be there. So he kind of needed an Anderson Silva to really get the interest in there. But what are you expecting the buy rate to be?
Pretty good. And again, if you wanted to like really do a deep dive into this topic, you guys should talk to Ramondi because this is kind of his baby. Like when I say that, I hate pro wrestling.
Isn't he at the trap house? He's busy.
He might be at the trap house. Yeah. But this, like, he loves he loves this kind of sort of fantasy kind of just off the wall kind of non-traditional stuff. But I want to say that the first Tyron Woodley fight did well, right? With Jake, and the second one didn't do as well, but that's almost to be expected. It was kind of like he filled in at the last minute, and he'd already beat him. And then I agree that the interest in like the Tommy Fury and even the Rockman fight didn't seem like it was massive. I think that there needs to be a little bit more of a storyline, and it's already kind of showed that Jake Paul versus MMA is a storyline that kind of works, and it just works to varying degrees. So I would imagine that I would guess that it would probably do about as good as the first Tyron fight, and then if he wins, then him and Nate would do much better. That would be my guess.
It's just one of those things where I can't believe Jake Paul is boxing Anderson Silva. I'm like, Jake Paul is boxing Anderson Silva. This is just ridiculous. And then
his brother boxed Floyd Mayweather.
Like, I know, but then also people are like, what's going to happen? Like maybe he'll beat Anderson Silva. And it's like, I know the Tyron Woodley thing was a real like shock for the MMA community, but Anderson Silva potentially being knocked out by Jake Paul. Like, how will we recover from this? I don't know what I'm going to do the next day. It's going to be Saturday when that guy died on packed to the rafters. Local show
It's
here.
weird that we've kind of gotten used to anything, right? Like when the whole Conor Floyd thing happened, it was such a surreal kind of shakeup, and now the Jake Paul thing it was like, oh my God, a UFC champion is going to box Jake Paul, and like Ben Askren is going to box Jake Paul. Like, it was weird, but it was like, I think the whole like Conor and Floyd thing, and then Logan and Floyd thing kind of like sort of leaned us into it, and now it's like, we'll just accept anything. It seems like Conor McGregor is going to fight Jake Paul. Like, yeah, why wouldn't they? It's just like the weirdest stuff just like makes sense these days, because that's what's going on.
Pride never die, man. The freak show fights are back. They never left.
Except anything like Mark Ramundi at the Trap House. Guys, make sure to follow Brett Okamoto on social media at Okamoto ESPN. Brett, we appreciate you joining us, man. And again, like, we say this to you every time, but unbelievable coverage, UFC 279. This guy is absolutely killing it. Make sure to check out ESPN MMA for all of his latest coverage. It's an honor, a pleasure. Thank you so much, Brett.
Casper, Dennis, thank you so much, dude. It's always fun talking to you guys. You guys take care.